Hey guys, Derek and
Paula here.
From a Guy, a Girl, and a Campervan. So after a pretty much green Christmas, it looks like our abnormally warm temperatures are finally drawing to an end.
It is getting quite cold here, and the forecast is actually calling for a fairly good snowstorm.
And so we thought that this would be a good opportunity to show you how we've prepared our van's plumbing system for use during the winter time. Most people, whenever they use the word winterizing, they're talking about preparing their camper for storage during the winter. But we actually live in our van all year round, so our process is a little bit different. We've briefly covered this topic in a previous video, but it wasn't actually winter at the time, so we felt that it might be helpful to go over it again now that it's actually cold outside. But if you want to watch that video first, we'll place a link for it right about here.
Where?
There.
There.
Right there.
Got it.
For those of you unfamiliar with RV plumbing, let's first take a moment to discuss the basics.
Our van is a perfect example of a simple RV plumbing system because all we have is one toilet and one sink. If your RV has a second sink or even a shower, they basically behave in the same manner as our single sink, so we'll leave them out for simplicity.
So these are all the parts visible from the inside of the van, but as I am sure you are expecting, there are a few more hidden behind the scenes.
First of all, when we turn on the tap or flush the toilet, all of that clean water has to come from somewhere. That's where the freshwater tank comes in. In our case, the tank is stored on the underside of the van and has a capacity of 60 liters or 16 gallons. During the warmer months, while we're on the road, or at least not parked at a campground, we typically fill that tank every chance we get through the opening located on the side of the van. Next, we have a small 12-volt pump that draws water from our tank and delivers it to both the tap and the toilet. If you have a second tap and a shower, that pump would deliver water to them as well. If we happen to be parked at a full-service campsite for a couple of days, instead of filling our freshwater tank and using our pump, we can instead simply plug into the campground water system. This means connecting one end of a water hose to the outside tap located on our site, and then connecting the other end to the second inlet on the side of our van. Doing so allows pressurized water into our system, so that no pump is necessary. As soon as we turn on the tap, the pressure from the campground forces water into our sink.
So whichever water source we happen to be using, let's assume that we just filled the sink and washed some dishes. Once we're done and pull the plug, all of that dirty water drains into what we call the gray water tank.
To understand why dirty water from the sink is known as gray water, we need to put its dirtiness into perspective by talking about the toilet. Every time you flush, fresh water is drawn into the bowl to wash down all of the waste products. This wastewater is about as dirty as it gets, and so it is typically called black water. Black water comes from the toilet, and gray water comes from the sinks and showers. And both of them have their own separate tanks.
So now that we've covered the filling of our tanks, let's talk about emptying them.
Once our gray and black water tanks are at capacity, we need to visit an RV dumping station. Most campgrounds, truck stops, and even some municipalities will have a dumping station available. Some are free, and some charge a small fee. Either way, it is important to ensure that you always dump your wastewater in a properly designated area. Both the gray and black water tanks generally drain from one single pipe, but are controlled using two separate pull valves. It's always important to drain the black water first, so that the relatively clean gray water can rinse the pipe afterwards. Most larger RVs will also have a water heater that delivers hot water to the taps and shower. That complicates the system slightly, but the same basic principles apply. Unfortunately, we don't have a water heater, so we won't bother going into those details here.
Now that we understand how the plumbing system is designed to function during the warmer months, let's look at how it changes once we hit the frigid winter months.
As you know, water expands when it freezes, so all of those pipes and tanks become a problem once the temperatures drop below 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Some RVs have heated pipes and insulated tanks to allow them to be used all year round, but unfortunately, our van does not. Which means that any water left in the system could cause our pipes to burst, or tanks to crack, or our pump to be damaged internally.
So the first step to winterizing our plumbing is a quick drive to the dumping station so that we can completely drain the entire system.
Most freshwater tanks include a small drain spigot, which is easily accessible from the outside. By opening the spigot, we can empty the freshwater. Many larger RVs also have low-point drain valves on the freshwater pipes. But for us, we usually just turn on the tap and flush the toilet after emptying the freshwater tank. This causes the pump to push most of the water from the pipes.
Now that we've emptied all of the fresh water, next comes the gray and black water tanks.
So now, we put on rubber gloves, because usually if you do it right, you don't actually get your hands dirty, but even if there's the slightest risk, I'd rather be prepared. We always keep a big box of these in the back of the van just in case. They come in handy for all kinds of different reasons, even if I'm just working on the van. Sometimes I'll put them on so I don't get my hands all covered in oil or grease. But right now, it's to protect me from other things. Next, you can see here where it says sewer hose. We've got a handy little compartment that holds our sewer pipe. This guy is kind of like an accordion, so it expands. So it shrinks up nice and small so that you can store it away, but then you can stretch it out in order to aim it into the hole a little easier. It's got these two little kind of hooks, one here and one here, facing opposite directions. The reason is because the pipe down there that we're about to connect it to actually has two little knobs that stick out in either side. And so whenever you screw this on this direction, both of these actually grip onto those little knobs and make a nice tight seal. That way, whenever you open up the valves, everything comes out this end instead of leaking all over you here. That's a pretty important part to make sure you get them lined up. There we go. Now that that's on nice and tight, this end just drops into the hole. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. Now that it's kind of cold, it doesn't like to get stretched fully. There we go, that's a little better. Just to make sure that it's right down in the hole. We certainly don't want it accidentally popping out and splashing all over us. Now you can see right here, there's a valve that I can pull out. I would pull that straight out and that'll open it up. That's gonna open it up for our gray water tank. On the other side, we have another valve that's exactly the same, and that opens up for our black water. The black water comes from the toilet. The gray water comes from our sink, basically. And we always open up the black water first, because that way, once it's done, we can open up the gray water, and that water is just, water from washing dishes, washing our hands, and stuff like that. So it's relatively clean water. We open up that one last because that can rinse off the inside of our pipes and everything from all the black water. It's just a nice way to get all that stuff out. And also make sure that you only open up one valve at a time. Open your black water, and then whenever it's empty, close it, then open up your gray water, and then close it when it's done. The reason you want to make sure that they're both done separately and never open at the same time is because if they were open at the same time, you could get cross-contamination, and you certainly don't want that. All right, so now here's where I yell over to the other side of the van for Paula, because she opens up our black water valve first while I sit here and watch this hose. Ready?
Here we go.
Okay. Okay, you can close it.
All right, closed.
All right. So now that the black water has been completely emptied and the valve is closed, I'll open up this valve to empty out the gray water to rinse everything out. Okay, not a whole lot in there this time. There we go. So now both of our tanks are empty. All that's left is to take this hose off, rinse it out, and store it away, and then we're done. There we go. Now luckily, at this dumping station, behind this door, they've actually provided a nice big hose that we can use fresh water to rinse everything down. And now we just rinse out the hose. We'll do the outside as well. And if you happen to do any spilling, which does happen from time to time, it's a nice idea to just kind of rinse the ground as well, just to make sure that everything gets in there. It's just a little bit of dumping station etiquette. So because of the way that this is made with the accordion style, sometimes it's a little hard to get all the moisture off of it. But it's kind of like the little wands that you would use to scoop up honey. It all gets trapped in there and the surface tension just holds it all in. So one of the ways that I find is easy to get the water off the outside, remember this is all clean water, so this isn't as gross as you may think, is if you just sort of push it against the ground, it forces all that water out, and then you can kind of just give it a sideways shake. That usually seems to get rid of most of it. And anything that's left will dry out by the next time you use it. So that we simply put back in our storage compartment and close it up. And we're done. Before I take off these gloves though, gotta put our cap back on. This cap is mostly for show, but it also serves as a last resort. If for some reason something happened with one of your valves and anything leaked out, this guy will stop it. And he has those same hooks on it. They grip on in exactly the same way. And now we're done. There we go.
So now our system has been drained as much as possible, but there's still a chance that some small amounts of water could be left inside the pipes or the pump.
To deal with that, we have to flush the system with plumbing antifreeze as a final level of protection. Plumbing antifreeze remains liquid until about minus 20 degrees Celsius and is what's called burst proof until minus 50. Burst proof means that it may get thick and sludgy, but it won't expand like water does, so it won't damage any of the plumbing components. Last winter, we got down to about minus 30 for a few days, which is unimaginably cold, but it's still a long way off minus 50. We add the antifreeze by pouring it directly into the freshwater tank, and then use the pump to force it through the pipes. Last year, we experimented with a number of funnels, but eventually determined that a simple transfer pump was the easiest. This year, we found a new funnel that makes the job even quicker and easier. So this year, we have decided to start using this funnel that actually has a little hose on the end. The hose is great because you can put it in the hole and bend it however you need to, and it's also great because it's a lot faster. So even though it's a little more annoying to have both of us out here, it gets both of us back in the van a lot quicker whenever it's freezing out. So we're going to show you really quickly how that works. So here we've got our little door, and behind it is access to all of our water. Inside here is where our fresh water goes. Just like that. We pop off this cap. And here, I'll take that.
And I'll take that.
All right. And now we just pour it in.
Oh, wait. Oh, I pulled it out.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. We're ready again.
Okay.
Oh, wait. And I gotta open up this. There we go.
There's a little valve on the bottom of the funnel here that you can open and close. It was closed.
I never know if it's open or closed. Awesome.
There we are. Now, if we were still doing it the way we did it last winter, I'd still be pumping away on that transfer pump for another couple of minutes.
And I'd be nice and warm inside.
So there's pros and cons then. There we go. And so we put the cap back on the funnel and this cap back on the spout, and then that way any of the extra antifreeze that might be in there doesn't leak out, and we can safely stow this away back under our bed. And this we can now recycle.
Put that back on. Make sure I did it right.
Good.
Awesome. Now let's go get warm.
All right, let's do it. So now we'll turn on the tap to flush antifreeze through the pipes and down the drain. And now the same thing for the toilet.
So now our entire system has been winterized, and there's no water left to damage any of the components.
But that means we have to start porting in fresh water each day for washing, cooking, and drinking. Luckily, we're able to fill jugs at our offices before leaving each night.
But what about our toilet?
Well, because the plumbing antifreeze stays liquid throughout most of the winter, we simply keep our freshwater tank topped up and flush with that instead. It just means a swirl of pink antifreeze instead of clear water. For the few times that the antifreeze gets too sludgy for our pump, we simply keep a jug on hand to pour directly into the toilet. So that's how we prepare our plumbing system for use during the wintertime.
But stay tuned, because I have a to-do list for Derek. If we're gonna stay in this van for another winter, I want my sink functioning a little more normally.
That's no problem. I've already got an idea for that and we're working on it. So we'll have a video about that solution shortly.
So one last note about plumbing antifreeze.
It's typically considered environmentally friendly and safe for your plumbing system, but every brand is different. So it's a good idea to always read the label and also check your owner's manual for your RV to make sure that it's appropriate for your particular application.
See you next time.
See you soon.